Saturday to you. We are live, a little bit impromptu, but good to have you on Unfiltered, where it is always a pleasure to be joined by all of you, wherever you are, Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcasts, where most of you are. Of course, you also can get us on Twitter, artist formerly known as X, of course, if you will, if you want to call it that, at Casey Stern. You can jump up into the bio, follow through. Hit up the YouTube channel, get all the content, the conversations, all the rants, much, much more, including some exclusive video as well over there. And we're currently on Instagram. We're new. I've been saying it's kind of like when you joined MySpace and Tom was your only friend. We're new over there. So help us out. Give us a follow at Unfiltered with Casey Stern. Being unfiltered with you, this one impromptu is about sadness. And it's about being sick to your stomach, sitting there as a fan more than anything else of the game of baseball, and watching the best arms in the game drop like flies. And in the last 24 hours, 3. Even though we got further evaluation still for Spencer Strider, and obviously you hope for the best news. You hope it's not Tommy John, which would be his second. Had his first 2020 when he was Clemson. But you got Bieber, you got Strider. Don't want to forget, just because he's not as big a household name, not an ace, Jonathan Loaizaga of the Yankees. As I don't even know if that's necessarily Tommy John based on reports, but a torn UCL. And there's a reason why in the title I put the word uncle, but put only UCL in caps, because it is to the point now where we have seen so many of these. And if you don't think the laundry list is big enough, Shane McClanahan, Yuri Perez a couple of days ago, right? Felix Bautista, Jacob deGrom, Sandy Alcantara. How about Dustin May? How about Robbie Ray? How about Walker Buehler? Garrett Cole, who's out with issues and trying to avoid the surgery. Kyle Bradish, who's got a sprained elbow. And I'm probably missing a couple. And now you can add to the list here in just the last 24 hours, Strider and Bieber and Loaizaga. And the question is, why? And we're going to get into some of it here today. And obviously I want to hear your comments along the way. You could jump in, whether you're with us live or on the belated side. If you're listening on Apple and Spotify when you get your podcast, get to me on the YouTube channel, on Twitter, because this is not one of those things where, you jump in and you have like a hardcore opinion. This is exactly what it is, because I'm not a doctor, and even a doctor couldn't tell you exactly what it is. And you probably ask 10, they'd have 10 different ideas. There's a number of factors involved. If I have a pitcher on here and ask 10 different ones, they may all have very good ideas and explanations of what they think it could be and what are the alternatives that we have to avoid this moving forward. But nobody knows for sure, because it's not just one thing. But I'm going to go with one word: maximize. We're having pitchers nowadays, with all the analytics that we have, maximize everything. Effort, max effort, all the time. Velocity, max velocity, seemingly all the time. Not the push and pull we used to have in our game. Look at some of the names I just mentioned. Go look at the velos on a Strider, on a Jacob deGrom, on a lot of the guys that I just named. You don't got many guys in there throwing like Jamie Moyer. So we're maximizing effort, maximizing velocity, we're maximizing torque, and we've got spin rates for days and every way that you can imagine to try and ramp up all of those things I just discussed, but everything is at a max level. And how can that not be the biggest factor of it all? Now, pitch clock, is that playing in here? Maybe. We'll get into some of this, and I want to get your comments as well. I will tell you, as always, we are presented by our good friends at BetOnline. Number one source for all your sports betting needs. Latest odds, lines, and matchup reports. They got baseball, basketball, boxing, golf, and more. Fastest and easiest way to get all your wagers, live casino and card games. They're all available right now, right from your phone. Get over to the website, use your mobile device. Sign up today, get in on all the action. Remember to use the promo code BELIEVE. It's BLEAV. It'll get you a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. Let's start with just the news from today, first and foremost, and going backwards a little bit. Spencer Strider, of course, last year led the league in wins, led the league in strikeouts, had some discomfort yesterday. Diagnosis from an MRI is that he'll need some further evaluation, but that there is damage to the ulnar collateral ligament in his right elbow. And we know what we think that means. It's not necessarily the case, but I think We understand that usually leads towards Tommy John. He's already got one in his history. This would be a second. And while we think about, and clearly should think about, the players in this sense first, and you're heartbroken for them. I don't care who you root for. If you're sitting there, you're a Met fan or a Philly fan, and you're anything but gutted for the game and for Strider first, before you get into the baseball stuff, then you're a moron. Then what are you watching this? Because these athletes are humans. That's part of the problem, is we treat them like their bodies aren't human, like we can expect more out of this machine, and you can't get more out of the machine. Clearly, the arms and the elbows are telling you just that. But it's about, first, the fact that here's a guy who's a competitor, and you're heartbroken for him. The road ahead, look where he had gotten to in this sport and was heading, right? And Bieber, a different scenario in his own right, which we'll get into. A guy who was in a walk year trying to earn the big payday of his life. And this is why these pitchers can't get those paydays to the level that they want. And we can talk about Scott Boras and all the different things that you want involved in Montgomery and involved in Blake Snell or whoever you want to pick and pluck from this past offseason. But how are you giving long-term contracts to pitchers to spend all of that money if you know what landscape we're living in right now, where you're going to have these guys miss a year at a time, do it maybe twice if it's a long-term deal? What am I paying for? I got no guarantees with anybody in life. We don't got guarantees with athletes in general, but where in the hell are you putting pitchers on that map right now? At the lowest of the low level of what you can actually have in terms of any expectation of what you're going to get in a long-term deal. Bieber, a guy who's sitting there coming off 2 brilliant starts, 12 innings, 20 strikeouts, which led the league after 2 starts. No runs allowed. Final year of his deal. And now this is the way he has to spend it, and now has to go prove himself and prove his health when he gets back to prove to get a deal, then get some kind of a Band-Aid contract somewhere to then go ahead and go back out into the market instead of going out there into the market off a year that looked like, you want to talk about a guy who was locked in. I mean, how are you not devastated for this dude? Locked in, put in all the work, knew what this year was going to be, and then 2 starts in was brilliant. And forget about for Stephen Vogt and his group, what it means for the Guardians. We understand how important he is for them, but how about even for the team from that standpoint? Again, we're talking about, please understand, if you're just joining me, prioritizing, caring about the player and the person first, of course, but there's the baseball side as well. You're the Guardians. He goes and pitches well, and you want to go ahead and move him. That's going to be something that certainly you're going to have a great chance to be able to do and get something real nice for a rental in Shane Bieber as he goes through a season looking as locked in and off to the great start that he was off to. I mean, you're talking about dominant. And now you don't have any of that at play. Now you're in a situation where for the Guardians, they don't have him. And what that loss is to that staff, they can't move him. What that loss is to in terms of that investment of what he could mean in terms of acquiring other pieces if he's not going to stay, and certainly didn't look like long-term that was going to happen. And now for Shane Bieber, his entire future and all that money, it's you got to be gutted for these humans who are athletes, yes, but they're people first. But not machines, because certainly pitchers are not. They're dropping like flies. You're going to go through the list again. McClanahan, Buehler, DeGrom, Perez, Bautista. I mean, Dustin May. Bradish, Ray, Garrett Cole. I know not all of them Tommy Johns, but just going through all the elbow issues. And now 3 today. Loizaga in New York, Shane Bieber in Cleveland, and Spencer Strider down here where I am in Atlanta. It's brutal. And for the Braves, I mean, now you lose Strider for, again, we don't know if it's Tommy John, but if it is, and however long he's going to be out, and you're probably not going to have Morton next year or Max Fried, and certainly this was a guy who's going to be at the forefront for you. Started opening day for a reason. He's your ace. He's a top flight Cy Young candidate, and for good reason. The guy's got dominant stuff. He's an ultimate competitor. Kid's just fun to watch. Great for the game. Just terrible. I mean, the Loizaga thing as well. I mean, it's another one. It's brutal. Guy going to miss a year plus, torn ACL. We don't know whether or not, based on the reports as I'm doing this, they were saying they didn't know, at least as of yet, if it was going to be, I think what he said, if it was going to be Tommy John, but he's out. And the question now is why, right? Why? So I do what most of you probably would do. I read and then talk to over the years, because this is not a today conversation. I have many, and worked with pitchers as analysts and talked to them off the air and had all those conversations. And, you know, they understood for years, including the ones and the names we're mentioning, if you were to ask them, I'm sure, where we were headed in terms of the difficulties of the amount of information you have and the capabilities of what's in your body and what kind of money that can amount to in your life, and then what the fears and the dangers are. That you're basically sitting there and you're riding in a car at times with that arm and elbow that's got no brakes, and you're just hoping that you don't run into something, because that's got to be how it feels. But when you're sitting there and we're talking about, I mean, how many times did you hear on Bieber? He only made 2 starts, right? I don't know exactly how many times I heard and saw it, but it had to be at least a handful that I remember hearing about how ticked up his velo was. Now he's got a tick or 2 up in his velo. That's all we hear about all the time. It's the first thing we hear. Oh, guy's tick or 2 up. Oh, he's tick or 2 up in his velo. Well, thank God for that, because that's what they're working for in the offseason. This guy's trying to get paid. You don't think he knows? And certainly what all of that effort that he's putting in to go ahead and add that velo and then put max effort, max torque, and all that, all of his pitches, and saying to himself, I'm just a few months away from putting together a deal that will put my family and my family's family and my kids kids set for life. You and I would do it too. But somebody got to get him out of their own way. And is it going to be one person? Like, it's certainly not going to be me, but who's it going to be? Like somebody to stand up and say, well, hey, look, I know that you guys, you owners, right? Like, I understand these pitchers are investments and I get what they're doing for you, but we don't want them. We're just going to decide all at once. Everybody will throw 93 from now on. Like, it is not going to happen. So when's it going to stop? And I don't have, like, normally when look, I'm doing just 20 years. Like, I love to be able to jump out and be like, here's what I think should happen, and here's what, right? I mean, we could do that kind of stuff with the moving screen. We could have that conversation going back to the game last night, right? I can have that conversation with you about how dumb I think it is that now Steve Cohen and like Mets Twitter have to galvanize to decide to have a standing ovation for Francisco Lindor when he comes back, instead of actually rooting for your own player who was dynamite for you all last year and is just off to a rough start, because you look and sound like idiots that you have to make this appointment view. Just as dumb as I think it is when people stand up because a board at a stadium tells them it's 3-2 and 2 out. If you need the board at a stadium, and I've seen this in Arizona, I've seen this in Tampa, you need somebody to tell you to stand up when it's 3-2 and 2 out. I want you out the door as a baseball fan. I don't even want you in the same area as me. Now, I can get heated and opinionated on all that. Here, I don't know the answers. I have questions, but someone needs to ask them. When you know that pitchers are creatures of habit, the way that we all do, and if you don't know, they are, okay? They are in their work regimen. They are between starts. They are during a start, between innings. That is how they are wired, and it's wired into their mechanics, and it's wired into their knowledge of their own body. And they're not, that's why do you think that they knew the discomfort? And both Bieber and in Strider's case, they knew something didn't feel right. Why do you see pitchers when it's just a twinge and it's a hint of something, an oblique, a shoulder, it doesn't have to be just an elbow, boom, immediately, because they are creatures of habit more than anybody else in a baseball field, and maybe more than anybody else in any of the sports that you watch. With all of that, if you then change, and I will say, and I've said, I like the pitch. I like faster paced games. I think the pitch clock has had some quirks. There are some things I don't like. I don't want to sit there and force you to go quicker when the game is that beautiful moment in a ninth inning of a playoff game. I'm not perfect with all of it. But at the same time, if we're being fair, you take those creatures of all that habit and all the things that they do the same way all the time and have for the same time for however many years, since they're kids. And then all of a sudden you say, do it faster. Don't take as much rest in between. Now you're going to do it harder and do it faster and not have the rest in between. Is that a factor with the pitch clock? I don't know, but it very well could be. I mean, people sitting there tweeting me, well, it's dumb to say that the pitch clock is a factor because here's how many surgeries we had this year and here's how many the year before. Look, I'm not a doctor, and a doctor can tell you, hey, they could tell you certainly why it could, but I think to me, you're just looking at, hey, we got a lot of these. You want me to read the names again? McClanahan, Bueller, Cole, Bradish, May, Ray, DeGrom, Yuri Perez a couple of days ago, and now add on to Bieber and Strider and Loizaga and however many else are going to come. But I don't have, it's not like where you could snap opinion and say, okay, whether it's right or wrong, how I feel, because I have no idea. But I know how to feel as a fan and as somebody covering the sport, and that is, it's sad. Sad for Bieber, sad for Strider, sad for the teams, sad for the fan bases, sad for the fan base of this sport. And some questions need to start being asked about, with all of these great TI-82 calculators that we have in this business now, where we can go and tell you exactly and dial down and drill down into what you need to do. And I'm sure they're all doing it in the safest ways possible, but they're the safest ways possible. You're still talking about a human arm and a human elbow and a human shoulder and a human body that are not supposed to move that way. And every pitcher I ever talked to for 20 plus years has always said the same thing, even well before any of this. You ever watch and slow down what it's like with that snap and you see what goes on in the arm? I mean, it's not supposed to happen like that, right? That's just not, that wasn't the way it was drawn up, right? But when you're max efforting on everything, and now we're seeing it's so much is dedicated to velocity. I mean, how do we know a guy is not doing well? Right? Immediately, he's a tick down in his velocity. That must mean he's hurt, or it must mean he's got dead arm, or something's wrong. What if he was just slowing the ball down to try and get more control of his fastball? And then let's talk about that. The thing nobody wants to talk about. The thing that I can't tell you if it's a factor, but I can ask if it's a factor. I went for years covering the game, having pitchers tell me that literally every pitcher in the game was, when I say using something, there was nothing wrong with it. Hitters knew, I don't want a ball to go astray and hit me in the face 97 miles an hour. I don't want that. So you got to use a little sticky, you got to use a grip, whatever it is. I'm totally good with that, as long as it's not too much to go ahead and doctor the ball, but you need it for a grip. Well, now we got to sit there and we got to go in the league. We got to have small print on our jerseys. We cannot be accountable for like 1,000,001 different things in the league, but we're going to be accountable for this. And we're going to say that you can't do anything. So now, how's the grip on the ball? How much do you have to overcompensate? I don't know. I don't have the answers to those things. And pitchers hopefully will watch this, or in general, I'm sure we'll talk about it. We'll have those answers, but I'm asking the questions this time, because that is a question that nobody wants to ask. Can that be a factor in all of this? I don't see why not. So I don't know what it is, but I do know what is, and that's UnCLe. That's enough. That at some point, look, injuries are going to happen, and they're going to happen to pitchers. When you see this many elbow injuries, somebody's got to start asking the questions. And then the biggest question of all is, even if we have the answers, if it still makes the most money, if it still puts pitchers in the position to go make the most money, if you're still going to pay for it, chicks dig the long ball, and, you know, the old saying, right? They're going to say the league digs velocity. If that's still the case, I'm not throwing slower. I want to get, I want to be successful, and I want to get paid. And I'm sure Strider and Bieber would do it all over again. But now Shane Bieber's not going to get paid that kind of money because of this injury. Question is, what needs to be done? And I hope people would jump in, forget about just with me, just in general, and give those answers, because it's just a tough day for the game. Those are two of the most fun pitchers to watch at their craft because of their abilities. And they're at the highest of their heights. And at a snap, it's gone. UnCLe. You can always catch us on Unfiltered again. Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcasts. If you're on with Twitter and X at Casey Stern, if you're not giving us a follow, do that. Please jump up into the bio, get over to the YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe. We've got all kinds of interviews, recent guests, Rex Chapman, Ariel Helwani, Mark Feinsand, June Duquette. We've got in the Wayback Machine, the Dusty Bakers, and many others. We've had coaches and players and all sorts of different folks on the show. It's always good to hear from you as well. Please comment along the way. This is Unfiltered. We're always presented by our good friends at Bet